So I listened to this about All Lives Matter, and people are so upset about Black Lives Matter and this group, and they try to demonize this group, and they say all these things about this group, which is mostly not true. But they're got this propaganda going on, and they're so adamant. They're defacing signs and they're defacing streets that say Black Lives Matter, as if that means anything, because it doesn't. You're just defacing it because it does nothing to the movement. But people are saying all lives matter, and they're saying, so they get offended when you say Black Lives Matter. They're saying all lives matter. But when people say all lives matter, it's hypocrisy. You know, it's hypocrisy. And we as people of color know it's hypocrisy, because if all lives matter, if really all lives matter, then we wouldn't need Black Lives Matter. We wouldn't even need it, you know, but we do need it. You know why? Because when you look at within the police department, when you look at that situation and you see how police mistreat blacks, you know, how they beat blacks, how they imprison blacks for drugs, whatever it is, you see that situation, you know, it shows you that all lives doesn't matter. When you look at situations in the school systems where, particularly in urban areas where blacks aren't being as educated, they're not given the budgets to educate blacks in those situations, it proves to you at that point that Black lives aren't mattering in those situations. When you look at job situations and the unemployment rate, when situations compared to blacks compared to whites, and usually black unemployment rate is double that of whites. When you look at those situations, it shows you that all Black lives don't matter in those situations. When you listen to politicians and they're talking about, you know, politics, and they're trying to get votes, some of them will use and villainize black people so that they can get votes. They create this division, they create this hate. It shows you that Black lives don't matter. When you look at situations, or when you're in situations and you're in a public situation, you're just minding your own business, and then somebody will walk up to you and think it's okay to call you a racial slur. It shows you that they're not valuing black people. When you're in the workplace and you see that the amount of promotions with people of color versus people of non-color, and in the inequality of those situations, it shows you again about how the Black life doesn't really matter as much in those situations. Not to mention the suffering that people of color have when they're in the workplace that they don't talk about, but the suffering. You see statistics, but the actual suffering of devaluation, just so the person can make a living for their family. This shows in that situation that Black lives aren't mattering. You know, it's a hypocritical statement when people say all lives matter. Do I believe it does? And majority of people of color believe it does, but it's a hypocritical statement because as we're not living that way. It's just words. You're not living that way. When people say, oh yeah, all lives matter, it's just words. They're not living it. My statement is, like, if you're gonna say all lives matter so that we don't have to have the Black Lives Matter movement, then prove it. Prove it. Prove it in education. Prove it with the police department. Prove it with politicians. Prove it on the jobs. Prove it in society in general as we work together and coexist with people of color. If you really believe, and you're so adamant about how I see some people about this all lives matter, then prove it.